Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are tackling something that is just truly awe-inspiring. It's the massive, messy, and honestly, infinitely complex reality of life on Earth. Just take a quick second and think about the sheer variety of living things sharing this giant rock with us. It's beautiful, absolutely, but scientifically speaking, without some sort of system, it is literal chaos.
Okay, let's dive into this. How exactly do you organize 2 million different species without completely losing your mind? Because that right there, that is the core problem of biology. We're sharing the planet with millions of distinct organisms, and we desperately needed a system to actually make sense of them all. We needed a way to catalog the living world so we could study it and, figure out our own place in it.
To understand how we actually solve this massive puzzle, here's our game plan for today. First, we'll look at the scope of biodiversity. Then, we'll get into sorting the chaos, followed by the evolution of the kingdoms. After that, we'll check out the acellular outcasts. And finally, we're going to zoom back out to discuss the threat to biodiversity.
Section 1. The scope of biodiversity, the scale of life.
Before we even try to organize life, we've got to pause and just appreciate how much of it is actually out there. The scale of this problem is staggering. Biologists have formally cataloged over 1.5 million types of animals and over 500,000 types of plants, 2 million known species. It is the ultimate biological filing headache for any scientist, just trying to keep track of who's who and what's related to what.
And this incredible biodiversity, it isn't just spread out evenly across the globe. Climate heavily dictates where life thrives. You've got the richest biodiversity completely packed into tropical regions, just bursting with dense, overlapping plants and animals. But contrast that with the polar regions. Those are incredibly harsh, freezing environments where only a highly specialized few, think polar bears or certain penguins, actually manage to survive.
Section 2. Sorting the chaos, the science of taxonomy. Enter taxonomy. This is humanity's super ambitious attempt to build a logical, universal filing system for literally every living thing on Earth. And people have been trying to do this for a really long time. Way back around 300 BC, the Greek philosopher Aristotle made the earliest known attempt. He just divided everything into two massive buckets, plants and animals. Fast forward to 700 AD, and thinkers like Abu Usman Umar al-Jahiz were diving deeper, writing about the specific characteristics of 350 different animal species, especially ants, actually. But the real game changer? That hit in the 1700s with Swedish biologist Carolus Linnaeus. He didn't just group things by how they looked. He introduced standardized ranks and a truly universal naming system.
Now, what's really interesting here is how Linnaeus's hierarchy beautifully scales down. It takes you from a massive, broad category straight down to an incredibly specific one. Take a look at a human and a simple pea plant classified right next to each other. We funnel all the way down from the largest grouping, the kingdom, into phylum, class, order, family, genus, and finally, species. It's such an elegant system, ending with Homo sapiens for us and Pisum sativum for the pea.
You might be wondering, why go to all this trouble? Well, mostly because common names are famously terrible when it comes to accuracy. Think about it for a second. A silverfish is an insect. A jellyfish is an invertebrate. A starfish is an echinoderm. Not a single one of them fits the biological definition of an actual fish. By using Linnaeus's universal two-word scientific naming system, binomial nomenclature, a scientist in Pakistan and a scientist in Brazil know exactly what the other is talking about. It saves a lot of global confusion, for sure.
Section 3. Evolution of the kingdoms. Updating the system.
So classification is an evolving science, and this is where the biological drama really kicks in. Let me ask you this. Is a mushroom a plant? What about a microscopic organism like Euglena? For centuries, that original two-kingdom system we talked about tried to force absolutely everything into either the plant box or the animal box. But it doesn't work. Euglena have chlorophyll just like plants, but they move around and don't have a cell wall, just like animals. It was a massive taxonomic headache that totally exposed the flaws in the old model.
Let's see how this builds over time, because the system had to iterate to solve these anomalies. First, the two-kingdom system failed. It just couldn't handle confusing unicellular organisms and completely ignored the difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So in 1866, Ernst Haeckel introduced a three-kingdom system by adding Protista. It was better, but it still awkwardly lumped fungi in with plants. And fungi are not plants. They don't even perform photosynthesis. Finally, in 1967, Robert Whittaker perfected the model by categorizing life based on cellular organization and how organisms actually get their nutrition.
And here we see the absolute elegance of Whittaker's five-kingdom model.
You've got Monera for the simple prokaryotes, Protista for complex unicellular life, Plantae for autotrophs that photosynthesize, Animalia for consumers, and crucially, a brand new kingdom, fungi. Fungi finally got their own well-deserved category as heterotrophic absorbers. Basically, organisms that secrete enzymes to break down organic material externally before absorbing it. Problem solved.
Section 4. The Acellular Outcasts. Biological Rebels.
So, we finally have a perfect system, right? Well, not quite. Even with 5 meticulously crafted kingdoms, nature still throws us a curveball with biological rebels that absolutely refuse to fit into any of these boxes. So the crucial point here is the definition of acellular. It literally means a living entity without cells. It lacks cellular organization entirely. Because Whittaker's entire 5-kingdom system is built on cellular structure, whether an organism is a simple prokaryote or a complex eukaryote, these acellular entities are fundamentally locked out of the classification system. They just don't fit.
These are the ultimate biological rule breakers. We're talking about viruses, which are usually just DNA or RNA encased in a protein coat. Then there are prions, which are incredibly just composed of protein only, yet they act as infectious particles. No way, right? And viroids, which are simply circular pieces of RNA. They show some characteristics of living things, sure, but due to their bizarre, almost crystalline structures when isolated, they aren't considered true organisms. They require their very own branch of biology, virology.
Section 5. The threat to biodiversity, our urgent challenge.
This brings us to a much more reflective and honestly a very urgent final chapter. Now that humanity has spent centuries figuring out how to map and classify all this magnificent life, we're faced with the devastating reality that we are rapidly losing it. The hard data breaking down what is actually driving species extinction might surprise you. While hunting accounts for about 23% of extinctions and habitat destruction is a massive 36%, the #1 driver sitting at 39% is actually the introduction of new species. For example, when eucalyptus trees were introduced to Pakistan from Australia, they consumed so much water that they completely disrupted the local water tables, harming all the small native plants around them. It's just a staggering chain reaction.
And this brilliantly illustrates the tragic human cost behind those statistics. These are not just numbers on a chart. There are unique forms of life literally blinking out of existence. Take a look at these endangered species in Pakistan, like the Indus dolphin, of which only about 600 remain in the river, and the magnificent Marco Polo sheep. Habitat loss, which is largely driven by human overpopulation, deforestation, and our huge resource demands, is pushing these incredible animals right to the absolute brink.
Which leaves us with a really critical question to ponder. We have spent thousands of years, from Aristotle all the way to modern geneticists, painstakingly naming, categorizing, and seeking to understand the 2 million species we share this planet with. If taxonomy is humanity's way of deeply understanding life, what exactly is our responsibility in preserving it? Because once a branch on that beautiful taxonomic tree is cut off, it is gone forever. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep wondering, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.